Good evening there, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight I'm going to be discussing one of my personal favourite Hitchcock films, and one of his best known, arguably, 1963's The Birds, starring Tippi Hedren as Melanie Daniels, who may or may not be named after her daughter, Melanie Griffith, and also starring Rod Taylor, the Australian actor, and also an all-star cast including Jessica Tandy, who was later, of course, well known for Driving Miss Daisy, and Veronica Cartwright, who was later in Invasion of the Body Snatchers and 1979's Alien, was also from, and also co-starring Suzanne Pleshette. The film is based on a concept by a novel by Daphne du Maurier, an author in which Hitchcock derived inspiration from two of his earlier films. Jamaica Inn and Rebecca were also based on books by du Maurier. This one was a short story, but Hitchcock advised his screenwriter Evan Hunter to expand upon the short narrative into a feature film, keeping the concept of randomized bird attacks on an unsuspecting village. The film is a classic, and deservedly so. It is one of my favourites, as I mentioned earlier, and it's just, I don't know, it's Hitchcock's only real foray into science fiction filmmaking, I think. Like, almost a monster movie. Like, there's no actual scientific explanation for why the birds go berserk and start attacking everyone. It just happens, and there's a scene when they're in a diner and they're trying to theorize about what may have occurred. There's an ornithologist, a bird expert, and a guy that says we should just round them all up and shoot them. And there's no real explanation. It's left up to us. The end is kind of ambiguous. This is a very influential film. Hitchcock innovated in many genres. He basically invented the action-adventure with North by Northwest and 39 Steps and similar films of that type. He also, I think, invented the modern horror film with Psycho and also with The Birds. The Birds feels like a predecessor to kind of human evil kind of movies. Films like The Fog and The Mist, things like that. When the humans start turning on each other. It reminded me a bit of those psychological kind of thrillers. The film kind of presents two films in one. It starts off like almost like a screwball romantic comedy, with Melanie Daniels, played by Hedren, playing a prank on Rod Taylor's character. And yeah, it starts off almost like a rom-com, and she kind of teases him and buys some lovebirds and takes the step of visiting him in his hometown of Bodega Bay, which is a really lovely locale. And I'm not actually sure if it's a real place or not. If anyone knows more than I, could you tell me in the comments? If it is a real place, it is a very nice place. The people there seem very friendly. And Hedren crosses the lake, gives him the lovebirds, goes back into town and gets attacked by a bird, the first of many bird attacks in the film. At this point, it just seems like a random bird attack, but as we know, it becomes a lot more frequent as the film goes on. Her costumes were designed by Edith Head, who designed costumes for many of Hitchcock's films. She wears kind of a green ensemble for most of this movie, which is quite a classic one, and kind of, typical 60s fashion. And the male fashion is good too, Rod Taylor's outfits. The movie has a sparse soundtrack. There isn't much of a score for this one. Berman Herrmann, Hitchcock's usual composer, did compose some themes for this, but you don't hear much music in this movie. It's a tense thriller, which begins as a kind of slapstick, is slapstick the right word? Kind of a light-hearted comedy, and becomes kind of a dark horror film later on, with some iconic images, like the birds just assembling in a sinister way in the schoolyard. The kids are singing an old folk song called Ristledy Rustledy, and in the background you see the birds just land on the kind of climbing frame in the playground, and it's just a really creepy and intense image, and it just seals the movie. Some of the stop motion effects in this film have kind of dated a bit, but it doesn't really harm the film. I still really enjoy this one. It's Arguably one of his best-known films, and it is one of the best, along with Psycho, its predecessor. After The Birds, Hitchcock didn't really have any big hits. He did Marnie, again with Hedron, and then he there was, let's just say, some ruckus behind the scenes between him and Hedron, and they never worked together again after Marnie. And after Marnie, Torn Curtain, Topaz, Frenzy, Family Plot. So none of his films after The Birds had the same kind of impact. I haven't actually watched all of the latter films yet, but I intend to in future for my review series. The Birds is one of those classics which you can't really argue with, despite some of the more dated effects. It still is very intense, especially the scene at the end in the attic, when the birds are just flying at Tippy Hedron like there's no tomorrow, just scratching her and pecking at her. It's just a grisly image. And Hitchcock really did give her a hard time in that scene. He was just throwing birds at her and making her work all day at it, and like he had it in for her. It is a marvelous film in many respects. One of my favourite Hitchcock films. A fan of my channel has sent me 2 films for review at a later date. Those are an earlier Hitchcock classic, also based on a du Maurier novel, Rebecca, which I'll review at some time in the near future. And also the only Hitchcock film ever to win Best Picture at the Oscars, by the way. And also another interesting looking movie, Mozart and the Whale, which I'll also review at a later time. So thank you very much to that fan for sending those to me. I'll have those reviews up shortly. And some more Hitchcock, and some more Kubrick, and some other directors. Have a great evening, everyone. That's The Birds. This is Adam Walton, signing out.